Hello, welcome to the Author Spotlight podcast. I'm Cynthia Martin, your host, along with yourauthorhub.com, where we authors discuss our book or our books and the writing process. So we want to welcome you today. And today our guest is Rex Barton. And Rex was born in 1944 in Santa Barbara, California. He's one of those West Coasters. And he's raised by loving grandparents. I think this is really very fascinating, on a walnut farm in Ventura, California. And he was an avid horseman. I love that. I was a horseman as a young girl. And he cared for all the big animals and small animals, from an elephant to a hummingbird. That makes his life very interesting, I think. And in the summer of 1962, he joined the United States Army. Thank you very much for your service, sir. And he completed
Thank you.
his training and at Fort Ord Army Post in Monterey Bay, California. And subsequently, he was stationed in Berlin, Germany, on a Cold
Yes.
War zone, and assigned to the 287th Military Police Company in Military Police MP for almost 5 years. So he has a varied background, and I'm really excited to hear from our author today and talk about his books. And what's really exciting for me today is the author has a couple of books, and he has a series in a publishing company. So hold on to your hats, folks. It's going to be very interesting. So welcome, Rex, and you have a guest with you today. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and please introduce your guest.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Cynthia. Yes. I go by Rex Barton. That's my author name. And I have a partner in Hawk Tales Publishing, which is a publishing company that we jointly made. And that's who's sitting to my right here, Jody Pappas. And she does all things business. She's got a degree in it and ran 8 ER units in Seattle for many years, and more than capable of taking care of our little company. I write. That's all I do. So,
Well, as we talk to authors all the time, that's a big, big endeavor to walk or to write and be disciplined in the writing process. So let's talk about your books first. And Jody, please feel free to jump in at any time and talk about the books. And so let's just get started right from the very beginning. How did you get started?
well, and my wife and I moved up to Sequim, Washington, about 10 years ago. And several months after moving, I was going to the kitchen to get some ice cream for my wife. And all of a sudden, I had this big flood of blood coming out of my mouth, my nose, everything. This happened 4 or 5 times and rushed to the ER. And finally, my primary doctor, one day after bleeding in his office, said, "I got to have a picture of your head. What's going on up there?" So he took me to the X-ray, and they did a picture. And all of a sudden, he said, he called an ambulance and said, "You're not going to live beyond tonight. You've got hours to live. You have a tumor in your brain." And I said, "Okay, well, let's get the show on the road." And he called an ambulance, and they took my wife and I to Seattle, Washington, to Swedish Hospital, and where they operated. And they were able to take 60% of the tumor out, and they left 40%. And then I have a lifetime of chemo to control the growth and any subsequent problems that the tumor is going to have. And it has caused many problems. That 40% is a huge factor. I lost my balance. I lost all physical ability to really walk and have control over myself. So I have fractured my left knee. I fall all the time. Even though I have a cane, it's still very, very difficult. But to get to the writing, one day after the surgery, 2 weeks after the surgery, I was laying on the couch at home, and I was awakened by a very familiar voice to me, and that was God. who
Mhm.
said one word, write.
Wow.
And I'm looking at myself and saying, write what? Of course, I didn't get an answer to that. But I know, being in law enforcement for many, many years, I know how to write traffic tickets and police reports. I was a mortgage broker. I could do home mortgages, but I didn't know what God meant by write. But I did pick up a pen and paper, and I thought, well, probably should start with what I know best, and that's me. And that would be my autobiography. And I got about one page done, and then all of a sudden I decided, no, there's more to me than just my autobiography. So I started writing about what I have done in my life. What did my life mean? You know,
Mm.
what did it mean? What does it mean to my family? What does it mean to others? And so I switched to what I knew probably best, and that was law enforcement. And this is the book that I first published, In the Eye of the Hawk. It was originally 470, 80 pages, and I decided to cut it in half and then make it a more easier read.
Mhm.
It's a true life story. Most every event in here is true. Names, places, dates of birth, everything's changed in it, but the stories are all accurate. And that book became a series of 4 more books. And I could probably still write about my experiences in law enforcement. I wrote a smaller book called Truth Be Told, which is all about my experiences in Berlin, and where a young couple had been shot by some East German locals. I was wounded at the same time, and it was just a senseless shooting, and it was all about target practice for the East German locals, and both of which, 20 years after they shot and killed this couple, went to prison for 6 years. And but my book explains all about my time in Berlin, and I started writing. I just couldn't stop. It just kept coming out of me. And I wrote, like I said, I wrote 4 more series in Hawk Tales. One of them being Mongoose Diaries, Panga Wars. And then I decided to challenge myself because people kept asking me, what else do you write? What genres do you write? And in my own mind, I thought, well, I can write any genre. And so I started out to prove to myself more than anything that I could write in other genres. And the first one I wrote was a book called Broken Spirit. Broken Spirit is an ongoing series that I hope someday is going to outdo James Bond, because it's similar in that the protagonist in the story is a woman, and she doesn't go to casinos, she doesn't go and flatter or flirt with men. She's on a mission, and she works for the CIA. She's also a sniper, and that's something that I learned as well. And I use what I learned in the book. And I call this, her code name for the CIA is Mary Lamb, Lamb.
Wow.
And if she wasn't working for the CIA, she's a target for every other country because she's that good, and she goes out and she takes care of business with all of the bad cartels and bad people in the world that governments don't want to deal with anymore. Jail doesn't help, whatever. So, CIA gets into some unusual things, and she is part of that. And that's going to be an ongoing series. And it's going to go from Broken Spirit series to Sniper, Sniper 1, Sniper 2. And that's where we get all of because there's just thousands of people that have been killed by snipers, no name attached to it as far as who killed them.
Right.
So I have a lot of books to write, and people that I could use as my target. And that's where we are right now. I have written children's stories as well, and they're about to be illustrated and published. So yes, I can write in almost any genre, adventure, crime. I can probably do a textbook if I wanted.
So,
So that's something that God gave me for having a tumor.
well, that's exactly what I was going to back up because you just told me so much there in that paragraph or two. First off, I just want to clarify, and then I want to follow up with some other questions, that your inspiration or how you got started was after brain surgery. Is that correct? And they left 40% of the tumor in your brain. And 2 weeks after, you heard the word right. And so you picked up and started writing your life story. And then it kind of went on from there. Is that correct? Is
Yes,
that right?
that's that's correct. That's
Wow.
exactly what happened. It was just 2 weeks after the surgery. That's when I heard God's word,
That's amazing.
uh, and God that I know since I was a child, and I have adventures with Him that what we'll get into shortly.
So let's stay right there on that topic for a moment. How long ago was this brain injury or this brain tumor surgery? You may have said I
Uh,
missed it.
2000, 2018,
Okay.
Wait, I'm
2016,
sorry. I think it was 14. You moved here in 2013.
right? 2014 is surgery. Yeah,
2014,
Okay.
September.
So
September
you've been
22nd.
writing since 2014 for sure by 2015. And
Yes.
I heard you mention 3 or 4 books that you already have penned. That's a lot of books, really. I commend you for that. So I'm also my hats off to you for writing in different genres. That's quite a feat. And I understand why now you have this partner who does all the business stuff and why you said I just write. It would take a lot of writing to be able to accomplish all of the things that you have. So let's stay with Hawk Tales for just a moment. So now with Hawk Tales and that series, there are 2 books. Is that correct?
4 books
Four
in that
books.
series.
Okay, I only knew about 2. So let's talk about those, and then we'll go to Broken Spirit, and then we'll go back to Truth Be Told. So
Yes.
in the series of the Hawk series, can you started out in it as it was your autobiography, and then it went into. So let's talk about how that developed and what that's more about.
Okay. Well, my autobiography I started with because that was the first thing that came to my mind
Right.
was just who I am. And then I decided to do what I did most of my life, and that was law enforcement. And then that's when I started with In the Eye of the Hawk. And every story in there is about something that happened one day in my life after I put on a uniform and a gun. And these stories were real stories. And sadly, people got hurt.
So
And as you
are
can
those
imagine,
as I'm sorry, are those as when you were in the service as an MP, or were you in law enforcement after the service?
this was after the service in as a deputy sheriff in Santa Barbara County.
Okay, awesome. So the name of the book that I'm looking at is In the Eye of the Hawk. Is the second one?
Yes.
I think that's are they both named the same and just part 1 and part 2? How does that work?
Book 1, book 2, but yeah, it's a continuation of book 1, Hawk, the Hawk series. And the reason why it's In the Eye of the Hawk, that was a nickname I picked up when I was a kid because I used to, all those animals you talked about in the beginning, from an elephant to a hummingbird. My grandfather, we lived on a ranch, of course, as you mentioned, but he was also a hunter and he would get off work, load up the dogs in a little teardrop trailer and take off for the Ventura Mountains. And he would hunt until early morning hours. Many times I went with him, but most often he would come back with something that fell out of a nest, came out of a hole in the ground. I've had everything, like I say, from a hummingbird to pet coons, pet skunks of all things, little tiger cubs, bear cubs, all the way up to an elephant. I've had deer, fawns that got hurt or mothers were killed somehow by other animals, and the fawns were left. I raised a lot of animals, and mostly dogs. I mean, he had 8 hunting dogs, and I used to play and swim with them in their watering hole as a child, and got to know them pretty well. And my grandfather taught me how to track and how to do a lot of things, how to shoot. So it just became a natural to go into law enforcement.
And
But
so that's where you picked up, you said something about you picked up a nickname or something. So was your nickname the Hawk?
my nickname was Hawk because
Okay.
he would bring home baby hawks, baby eagles, anything that he found on the trail, falling out of a tree, he would bring home. My job was to feed it, care for it. If I had to have a vet, the vets were available to me, and then release them back in the wild when they were ready.
Okay. So that's where the name of the book came from. That's kind of
Yeah.
fascinating. And so in the Eye of the Hawk, how does that translate into your police work?
Well, and like I say, my nickname was Hawk, so people would call me that. And in the Eye of the Hawk was just it just came. This is a natural thing that these are all the stories in the book are true. And so it's just from my eyes, what I saw to what I wrote. And
Awesome. Okay.
that was the projection.
That's fascinating. I really like that. So, I also understand that you talked about the book Truth to be Told. It's the stories of Berlin. Is that correct? I heard you say that.
Correct.
So that's another book that you have available. Was that after In the Eye of the Hawk, or in which order were these books given?
I think I wrote that one after In the Eye of the Hawk because I hadn't gotten into Broken Spirit. I hadn't done anything other than my own life stories. So after finishing the Mongoose Diaries, which is another part of my life after the military and prior to law enforcement, then I went to the Broken Spirit series. But everything that is in the Eye of the Hawk series is something that I personally got involved with. A lot of training other people, people from the service that I knew, from law enforcement that I knew, just friends that you make along life's path. And the most important thing to me, though, with all of it, was anything I did, it was not for any self-gratification or need or want, but it was something that God led me to. I've known him since I was 5 years old. And at 7 years of age, I was in a military school that my mother put me in, and I was swimming in a pool there on a hot August day, and I drowned. I was dead for over 20 minutes.
Wow.
And during that 20 minutes, I met God. I was standing right in front of him. And one of the things he asked me was, if I was Rex, are you ready to come home? And all I did was turn my head off to my right shoulder, and I just started to say, but my family's going to miss. All of a sudden, I was away from God, and I had 2 angels, one on each side of me, whom I have known since I was very young, because God's hand has been on my head my whole life. This is nothing new to me at all. I mean, it may be hard to understand, but if you were there, you would know. And God has led me my whole life through probably 25 or 30 more near-death experiences. But when I came to after drowning, that's when my life really changed as far as, how I walked, what I did. I never liked bullies. I never liked fights, and yet I would step right in the middle of it and end it right then and there. I was always the biggest kid in school. I grew up to be 6'7 and a half. and
Wow.
over 270 pounds, and it was all from training, all muscle. So people didn't mess with me. And when
Yeah.
I said stop, they usually heard. They stopped.
So
And go ahead.
no, that's just okay. I was just fascinated with your death experiences and the supernatural and
Yeah.
angelic beings, and I'm right where there with you. Is any of that in any of your books? It sounds like that's another great would be another great series.
Yes, it is in my books. I kind of weave. Well, to start off, the first page of every book starts off with John 3:16, and it's just my way of when God said, "Rex, get up and write," and then I said back, "Well, if I write, I'm going to, bring you forward
Mhm.
and let the world know I am not afraid to talk about God or do what He asked me to do."
So
I've trained a lot of people.
who would be your reader for in the Eye of the Hawk series? What type of a reader is looking for that kind of a book, do you think? An adventure
Well,
person or
I've had a lot of reviews, and it comes from older people
Mhm.
all the way down to young teenagers. A lot of policemen, a lot of military, women, all ages, all people. It became a very, very popular book, and is still growing and growing. Things are on the move now, where everything that I have written and starting to write other things, hopefully will be with a traditional publisher soon.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the truth to be told in Berlin. So that's your
Mhm.
story of it sounds like an innocent couple that was shot and apparently died. And so is that also an the police adventure series type type story, or talk about that a little bit?
Well, truth be told, has to do with yes, a young couple that was out on a July day in the summer to have a picnic, and they had a motorboat that they were going up the canal to a place called Bravo Checkpoint. That's the entry and exit for Berlin for anyone going down the Autobahn to West Germany. And before they reached that part of it, the Volpel Tower was across the canal from the Telltale Canal is probably no more than 40 feet wide, 50 feet wide, or excuse me, yards wide, and it goes from west to Wannsee Lake in West Berlin all the way to the Reiser Canal, which goes into East Germany. And the guards often took shots at people. It didn't matter if you were in a general or if you were a civilian. They would take a shot at you if they had a chance. And that's what happened that day. And I was in my office, which was in just off of Wannsee Lake. And it just happened to be Hitler's vacation home in Germany, in Berlin, and turned me over to the U.S. And I left there. It's about a 15 to 20 minute fast boat trip to Bravo Checkpoint. We put the pedal to the metal and we got there in about 10, 12 minutes, but we were too late. The bodies were floating in the water. Boat was upside down, and I was going to shoot one of the guards. They jumped down. They shot at us as we came near, and then they threw their guns down, jumped down from the guard tower, and started running towards the forest, or the Grunwald, as they call it. I had an M14. I had them both in my sight. I was a sniper, as I shared, and I could have got them with one shot, both of them, because they were running right behind one another. And then I heard from God again, no. And I looked up and okay. So I handed my gun to my rookie partner, and then I jumped overboard and grabbed both bodies, and there was no life, but I took them both, one under each arm, and swam, on my back with him in front and got him up on shore. And I had them, side by side, and I was kneeling over them. And at the time, it was such a senseless killing. There was just absolutely no reason for it.
Mhm.
And I looked down on them and I asked God, why couldn't I have gotten here 5 minutes earlier? I could have saved him. And looking down at him, it was so sad that even I, a big guy, started to have tears in my eyes. I couldn't help but cry.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, within an hour, there was half of an entry, American infantry and a tank on one side of Bravo checkpoint, and on the other side of the canal, the East Germans and Russians were set up with half of a battalion. I mean, all of a sudden, I realized that had I shot those guards, we would have been in the next war.
Right.
And that's why God said no. And I'm glad I listened, because I've never had so many guns pointed at me as at that moment. And for an hour, I straddled this couple and just looked at one army, the other army, and then up. Thank God, what do I do now? What's going to happen here? Finally, I just, with assurance, stood up and walked away and walked back down to my boat. It was, it's a big, 28-foot fly bridge boat that we use as our command boat. And then the newspapers came, and the big crowd started coming, West Germans, East Germans on the other side of the canal. It was in the worldwide news for about 2 or 3 weeks. And I could do nothing but shake my head and just shed a tear. I mean, it was such a senseless thing, but this is what happened. Charlie Checkpoint, which I've been at many, many times, same thing. People are killed all the time trying to escape the tyranny of communism and East Germany. So I learned a lot in
Yeah.
that 5-year period of time.
And I would think, from what you've told me, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but a summary, we could say the value of listening to God, even in the midst of what looks like this should be the right thing to do, that having to take his word and trust it rather than what we see, right?
Exactly.
Amazing.
Exactly.
And because that does happen, that what makes sense to us isn't what makes sense or what God is directing us to do. But when we trust him, then afterwards we find out why, right? We
That's
see
right.
that the wisdom of what he knows that we don't know, and it works out always for the best. So let's talk for a few minutes about the broken, I think I forgot the name of it. Was this
Broken
Broken
Spirit.
Spirit? Yeah, I was gonna say I thought it was
Yeah.
Spirit, but I wasn't sure. The Broken Spirit. Now that sounds exciting. Now this your inspiration for this was just a challenge. Could you write a genre? Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. I wanted to challenge myself. People would ask me all the time, what genres do you write? And I would flippantly say, in any genre I want, because I know that if I started out with something, God would give me the rest. And that's exactly what has happened. And Broken Spirit has to do, yes, some of my training as a sniper, and things that I have done in the military I had for a brief time while my partners were alive, a private search and rescue unit. Thank you. And the partners were very wealthy, and they knew a lot of political people high up in Washington. And when Americans got themselves in trouble anywhere in the world, rather than send out a SEAL team or a military unit, they had to be something a lot less foursome. So we were called on. And I had 8 people that I could well trained, that I trained from my training. And we would go rescue the people and bring them back home.
Wow.
That was the long and the short of it.
And so
And then both of my partners.
I was just going to say, so that story, those types of story is what is included or contained in Broken Spirit. Is that correct?
Yes, some of it is. Yes.
Okay. And so talk about your character of the book, you'd mentioned earlier that it was a woman. And how did you come up with who she was and how did you develop her character?
Well, that was because of James Bond. I mean, James Bond and Arthur Doyle, he did a lot of good books,
Mhm.
but I just kind of felt like it was time for a woman to be on center stage and to be able to take the challenge that would be set before her. There are a lot of women in the CIA.
Mhm.
How many of them are snipers? I don't know. But because of my training, my protagonist, Mary Lamb, is a sniper, and she's sent out by the CIA, like I said before, to eliminate some of the real bad people in the world. And that's what she does. And I just had not using any part of James Bond, but developing a woman into a position of authority. And later books, she started training partners, and it was not about the money, not about the parties or anything. It was about business. And I tried to keep the story along those lines of that. This is what happened,
Right.
and this is how it happened. And one thing Mary was good at was her job, and then getting away. She was a woman of. She changed her hair color every day. You would never find her.
That's
She had as
interesting.
many cars and different makeup jobs. I mean, she could disguise herself very, very well and escape right through the crowd of the police. It didn't make any difference.
Right. So a couple of questions that I like to ask, and you just answered them there, is about, is there a surprise twist? And for me, the plot or the character of the book is a woman. So that what a surprise, and a lot of changing there with the ability for it to switch with the multiple looks of being able to do that. So how many you'd mentioned some plans for sequels or spin-offs of this book or further exploration of the topic. How many do you have planned, or does it just come to you, or how do you map out what books you're going to continue on with, or how you start a series? How does that work for you?
Well, again, it's a God thing. It's me starting out with prayer with every book, and then waiting, listening. It may take more than an hour a day, but eventually I get the drift of what I'm supposed to do. A broken spirit, well, just like in the eye of the hawk, comes from my experiences, things that I have done myself. And so it's not difficult to put a woman in the spotlight and write about what takes place when
Right.
you're doing this kind of work. I mean, law enforcement's been my job all my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I still carry a badge and ID even at my age. So, and I still try to keep up on my try to keep up with my abilities, although I am hindered considerably now after having the brain tumor. But it's something that I don't want to say comes natural because I got to work at it too. But
Right.
I just love to write. And I have now we have 10, 12, 15 books. We have a lot of books, and I have 15 children's stories that we're going to be illustrating here soon and getting out. So I'd love to write.
Yeah. So talk
And
about that a
and
little bit.
Jody, by the way, is a writer too.
Wow. Talk about that, Jody. Talk about the process of how a writer writes a book and then what happens with the book after it's written. How does that work?
Well, yeah, we've learned a lot in the book industry and navigating the book industry. We've both been through a lot with navigating
Mm-hmm.
the publishing industry, self-publishing, and that's why we started Hawk Tales Publishing. And I haven't published any books, but I have started writing, and I've learned from Rex, and I've learned by doing this process and learning the industry and what it takes to create a cover for your book and create the interior and the tagline for the back of the book. And the pages inside and what size should a book be, such as Rex's first book. He wrote it was very thick. And so we took that book and split it into 2 books because it was just too big.
Mhm.
And so things like that we've learned, and how to best market and publicize. And it's just been an eye-opening experience. A lot of heartbreak, tears, blood, sweat, and tears, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
But I have learned an incredible amount. And there are many programs out there that can help writers write a book. Part of the reason I connected with Rex, seeing he was a veteran, I came to one of his first book signings where I met him and Tony, his wife. And I thought, well, I could really help, with some of this and learn. And so it's been a long journey. It's been a hard journey. But I really believe that veteran stories need to be told. Our
Oh, I
stories,
agree.
every one of them,
I
every one of us, we are made up of our stories. And I think before we lose these stories, Rex, one of the greatest things was, he said, I really want to write books, one, to help my family understand what I went through. And I'm honored to work with a veteran and help him write his books. And I've been really, part of the blessing for me has just been to learn the process. And then I would love to help other veterans write their stories, or other people who've been through extraordinary things.
Yeah.
So I've been really blessed to learn, and it's been hard. It's been very hard. And plus
And-
with the brain surgery. Mhm.
Exactly. And as an author, I have 3 books myself, and you
Mhm.
think about writing and the discipline that it takes to write. And my first book, I got so tired of writing it. At the end, I thought, that's just done. I'm just done with it. I'm done. And that's what I did. I'm done. And I've always thought I should go back and change some things, but the thought of it is just so, oh, it's such a huge undertaking. It's almost like
Overwhelming.
reading it, writing. I'm almost, back and forth. Should I just rewrite the thing, or should I try to edit it, or how shall I do it? And so, we grow up in America. I will just speak from America, that we can have our dreams and we're going to go out and you're going to be an author. Well, just
Yes.
writing the book is it's huge, but it's so small in comparison to what else you have to do. Exactly. What size should I make it? Now, I did know ahead of time to make my book 150 pages ish. Great read,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so I
Yes.
knew not to, even though all these, this is not a fake background. These are my books. I've read all those books. I love books.
Love it.
So, I can read a big, thick book, but most people aren't like me. So
Yeah.
I love what you said, and how to do the right size. I have a workbook that's quite big, and I thought I should have did that smaller. But it isn't until you've made the mistakes, because you don't always have someone to guide you. And that's how
Sid.
you learn, is by mistakes. So it's invaluable to have someone who's done it before. And you guys say you have what,
Yeah.
10 books or 12, or how many books?
Well, we have about 7 books that have been published.
Okay.
And then he's written a good 10 or 15 more books that have not been published. We have the manuscripts on so many, and he continues to write. Broken Spirit 3, he continues to write, and caregive and try to deal with his own health. And it just amazes me. But I just think what a blessing this is to share with the world things, what he's lived through. And I just think other veterans, I just would encourage them to write their stories. And I know sometimes with PTSD and depression and anxiety, these men and women have lived through so much. And it's hard to write their stories. And I think they're afraid sometimes, but there's ghostwriters that can write your story for you. There's pen names. You don't have to use your real name. There's so many options. And it excites me because I've learned how to do this. And our goal was to eventually bring in new writers, younger writers, and teach others how to write their stories, because I would have never thought about writing a book, but it's not that hard. It's hard, but with the right help, it's okay. You can do it.
Exactly. And with
Yeah.
Rex's history of training, in
Yeah.
those skills are transferable. Once you've been a trainer,
Right.
you just switch it. I understand, I've been a trainer before, and so actually what
Yeah,
I love to train. So I
yeah.
so appreciate that. But as far as the writing and then the book size and then the covers and the back, the writing on the back, and should you put a picture of the author, should you not put a picture of the author, getting your ISBN, where are we going to put the book, so on and so forth. It's just, there's just so much
Right.
to it other than just writing a book. So how do you find your books, and talk a little bit about the publishing company and all of that?
Okay, Hawk Tales Publishing. It's Hawk. We named it Hawk Tales, and it's TALES, Hawk Tales
Okay.
for books, and hawktalespublishing.com. And so that's our website. You can go to the website and see all the books that Rex has published so far and read a little bit about him. And then we're also on Facebook, Instagram, and, you know, many of the social media pages. And so we have the Facebook going. And so we will be, you know, letting everyone know when new books come out and what Rex is working on. And, you know, we try to do the pictures and give them some things to see from the past, all his, you know, military pictures of him and in Berlin, Germany. And so you can really delve into the stories.
Now, are those
It's
on the
quite
website or on the
fascinating.
Facebook group or the Facebook page? The
The
pictures.
Facebook page has all the photos.
Okay, and
Yeah, if
so
you want
what
to
is
see
the
the
name
photos.
of that page? Is that Hawk's Tales as well?
That is, I believe we changed it to Rex Barton Books.
Okay. But they
So
can
Rex Barton
probably
Books.
link it from the website, right?
Just look for
Yes.
Rex Barton.
Yes.
Correct. They're all linked. Rex
Okay,
Barton
perfect.
is his pen name. Uh-huh.
Okay. And
Yes.
so, but to get the books and to find the link to get to the right page on Facebook, they would go to Hawk's Tales, TALES.com. Is that correct?
Hawktalespublishing.com
Oh, publishing.
is our
Publishing.
website.
Sorry, I missed the
And you
publishing.
can, and they're linked to the books, and they're at Barnes and Noble, and they're links to buy the books from the website. Yes.
Oh, how
Yes.
exciting. Yeah,
Yes.
fascinating stories. I mean, we could just stay here all day and talk about all these different Berlin. I mean, one book sounds like it's just packed full of exciting
Yes.
events. And I think I've said already, but I do want to say again, you know, I do so much appreciate your service. What a fascinating life. And we here in the United States don't honor our veterans enough, and I do honor you for your service, and I thank you for that. So is there anything
My
else
pleasure.
before we close out our interview today that we forgot or that we missed? I know you kind of alluded to the children's books that are being illustrated right now. Is there anything else that we can add that might be of interest to authors that are watching? People who are wanting to write a book and learning about the process? What else could we add that would be of value, do you think?
I think one of the first things I learned was that when you sit down, be in a quiet place, a place where you can relax and get comfortable, and whether you use a computer, typewriter, or pen and pencil, it doesn't make any difference. Just begin and try to discipline yourself to do it at the same time every day. I started writing at night because after the surgery, I wasn't able to sleep anyway. So I made use of the quietness of night on the dining room table and began. Don't correct, don't go back. Oh, I made an error. No, you don't correct your errors. You don't do anything. That's what editing is for. And that's after you finish writing.
Yes.
I don't count the pages. Just write until you're done. Your editor will tell you where the paragraph begins and ends, and how to spell the word. So, you know, that's what the editors are for. And what my wife did and what Jody did after I would write is proofread.
Yes.
And Jody's really good at being able to, you know, detect when a sentence ends and a new one begins. So, because I flunked English, and yet here I am a writer. It sounds, you know, a long way apart, but you know that there's different disciplines for different reasons.
Yeah, Rex brings up a very good point about, you know, resources. He and I have been part of many of the book clubs here on the peninsula. So we've joined area book clubs,
Yeah.
and we've met many authors who live right here in the area. And so we know many, many other authors. And what's wonderful about that is the networking and the resources and the wonderful authors who have really constructive and honest and godly advice has been very helpful. Yeah.
Such great tips. I love every one of them. Just right is the most, I think, is the best. I mean, you just have to just sit down and do it, and do it every day, and just keep at it. But I love every one of your tips. You both have been a joy to have as a guest today, and I so appreciate your time. And those of you who are watching our podcast today, we had a little bit of technical issues, and that happens in life, right? Because this is real life. But we do want to thank our author and Hawks Tales Publishing for coming on today and talking about the amazing books that they have. I advise you to go over there to their website at hawkstales, hawkstalespublishing.com, and check out all the offerings. You've got to go over to Facebook and look at those pictures. It always puts a little bit more meat to the story when you can see a picture, right? But most of all, we want to say thank you for your service and for being a guest with us today. And we want to say from the Author Spotlight, which is hosted by yourauthorhub.com, thank you. And to all of you who are following along, we'll see you next time on the podcast. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.